Okay, welcome to this lesson with me, Teacher Kamanga. In our today's lesson, we're going to look at coordination. Alright, so in our today's lesson, we're going to look at this question, which was extracted from 2020 biology, question number 4. So the question reads, figure 4 shows the structure of two neurons. Okay, so we have two neurons. We have the second one, which is this one, and then the first one, it is this one, and this one is the second one. Okay, so neurons are the three in the actual sense. So we have the third one, which we call the sensory neuron. Okay, so this one is known as the motor neuron, and this one is known as a relay neuron. So the first one, mostly in terms of alignment, we have the sensory neuron, then we have the relay neuron. Okay, then we have the motor neuron. Okay, so we need to understand this sensory neuron is mostly attached to what we call receptors. Okay, receptors that are able to detect the change in the environment. Then this motor neuron, it has attached it to what we call the effectors. Okay, so effectors, for instance, can be a muscle. All right, now having said that, the question is saying, the first question is saying, identify the two neurons shown in figure 4. Identify the two neurons shown in figure 4. So the neuron number 1, it is the one that I've said it's a motor neuron. Okay, so we have motor neuron. Okay, motor neuron. The second one is known as the relay neuron. Okay, the relay neuron. So the first one is the motor neuron, the second one is the relay neuron. Okay, hope that one is very clear. All right, so let's come to this one. We're saying state the function of the part Q and state the function of the part P and Q in neuron 1. So we have part P, which is this one, and part Q, which is that one, in neuron 1. Okay, so this P, we need to know that these are dendrites. Okay, so the dendrites, they receive impulse, of which this impulse, after they have been received, they are transferred to the cell body. Okay, the cell body is just there. All right, so that is their function. So the function of P is to receive impulse and transmit to the cell body. Okay, then when we go to Q, the Q is called the myelin sheath. Okay, the myelin sheath are the one that are responsible for the provision or to provide electrical insulation and help to conduct the impulse. So the Q or the myelin sheath is the one that is responsible for providing electrical insulation and help of the conduction of the impulse. That is its function. Okay, to help in electrical insulation and also conduction of impulse. All right, so that is about these two. Okay, we come to this part where we're saying, what do you understand by the term reflex action? What do you understand by the term reflex action? So by definition, we're saying a reflex action is an automatic and stereotype response to a stimuli. Okay, a stimuli is a change in the environment. So when we're talking about an automatic and stereotype response to a stimuli, we're talking about a situation where you need to respond to the changes that are taking place in the environment. Okay, so there are some times where there are some other responses that we cannot control. Those are the ones that we're referring to as reflex action, because it's automatic actually. All right, so we are saying these are automatic and stereotype response to stimuli. That is what we call a reflex action. Okay, we come to B2. We're saying give an example of a reflex action. Give an example of a reflex action. So for instance, when you touch a hot object, you are not going to think whether you want to remove your hand from that hot object or not. Your hand will be just removed automatically. So withdrawing a hand after touching a hot object is an example. If you want, you can say withdrawing a hand after touching a sharp object. Again, we're just talking about one and the same thing. So that is an example, withdrawing a hand from a hot object. Okay, another example is when, for instance, a small insect enters into your eye will just start removing it. So that one also is an example of an automatic response or a reflex action or a knee jerk. Okay, those are some of the examples. So we can just put one there where we're saying withdrawing a hand after touching a hot object. All right, so let's come to this one. We're saying describe the path taken by an impulse from receptors to effectors. Okay, remember when I was explaining at first, I said the sensory neuron are attached to the receptors while the motor neuron are attached to the effectors. Okay, so when describing a path, so what you just need to understand is that you say impulses are, are transported from the receptors to the sensory neurons. Then the sensory neurons, they transmit the same impulse to the relay neuron, and the relay neuron will also pass on to the motor neuron. The motor neuron will transmit that impulse to the effectors. So the effectors at the end of the day, if they are muscles, are the ones that are going to help you remove your hand. So when explaining, you just start from the receptor up to the effector, where you say an impulse is transmitted from the receptor to the sensory neuron. The sensory neuron transmits that impulse to the relay neuron, and the relay neuron will transmit the impulse to the motor neuron, and finally the motor neuron will transmit that impulse to the effectors. Okay, so that is how you are supposed to describe the path taken the neuron. Okay, so the other thing that we need to understand, the grammatic representation of the path of uh, 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 an impulse as it is being transmitted by these neurons. So all that we need to understand it, I think we're going to discuss it in our next questions that we're going to look at. Okay, so this has been Teacher Kamanga with you. Have a blessed day.